If you're someone who gets caught up having the same thought patterns day after day and they're not helping you to be a better or happier person, this video is for you. We all have thought distortions every day, all the time. And when we're able to untangle those thought distortions from our experiences, we're able to see things more clearly. It's like if you need glasses and you're trying to see and everything's blurry and you're just making assumptions about what things are, that's a thought distortion. And then you put on your glasses, oh, now you can see that's a table, right? That's a picture. I can actually see the details of the picture clearly and accurately. So that's our goal. Okay, so we're going to go through 10 different thought distortions today and what a typical thought distortion within that category might be. So the first one we're going to start with is black and white thinking, also known as all or nothing thinking. So this one happens often when it comes to achievement. So for example, if you're in school or your kids are in school and you want them to either get like between a 90 or 100, or like it doesn't even matter that they studied, it didn't count because it wasn't a high enough score. They needed to get an A or it's practically failure, right? I think a lot of us can think this way of like, I have to be the best or I'm nothing. I have to win the soccer game or I'm nothing. I need to get first place in the piano concert or competition, I guess, or I'm nothing. But that's just completely not true. Why are those things even valuable? They're valuable because we put energy and effort and we work and we become better and we improve. So one thing that's really helpful in fighting this specific thought distortion is having a growth mindset. So a growth mindset is basically when we believe that we can improve. So it's not I'm either smart or stupid. It's that I can study, I can learn, I'm capable of taking in new information, and that can help me to understand more things, which would make me seem to be smarter. I'm not good at sports or bad at sports. I can practice, I can learn new skills, I can take lessons, I can work with someone who knows what they're doing, and I can become better. So that's what growth mindset is. It's just about never being at the end, always having space to improve and always believing that you are capable of improvement. Okay, so the next thought distortion is called overgeneralization. So that's when we take one experience and then place that experience on the future of what all other experiences like that might be. So for me, an example of this is I tend to be pretty anxious to go to big gatherings with a lot of people, especially people I don't know very well or haven't seen for a while. So if I was anxious about it and I went and I didn't have a good time, I was stressed, I didn't know who to talk to. When I was talking to people, I didn't feel super comfortable. Now it would be very easy and even natural for me to say, okay, I don't want to go to parties like that in the future because I'm going to feel uncomfortable. I'm going to feel awkward at all of them. That would be an overgeneralization, assuming that my one experience is going to paint the rest of my experiences in that way. What I could do instead is I could go have whatever experience I have, come back and realize that just because this was one experience, it doesn't mean anything about the next experience. And if I wanted, I could do different things to prepare. I could do different things to make myself enjoy the experience more. I could bring a friend. There's so many things I could do that I could actually control to help me have a better time. But even if I didn't do those things, there's no guarantee that I'll have a bad time again. Okay, the next distortion is a negative mental filter. So this one I think we use in relationships a lot. I would say especially romantic relationships, but any relationship where we're spending a lot of time with someone. We tend to just focus on the things that the person is doing wrong and let those take up way more energy than all of the things they're doing right. So if I'm spending a day with someone and they do 25 things right and 2 things wrong, more likely than not, I'm going to focus on those 2 things a lot. And I'm going to think, man, why did they say that thing? Why did they do that thing? That embarrassed me. I'm so mad at them. Instead of, wow, look at all of the things they did correctly. They did that made me feel good or made me feel special. So in general, what we want to try to do is even that balance out a little bit about where we put our focus. It's not to say that people don't do things wrong. They do. Or that we can't even pay attention to the things they do wrong. It's important to be conscious of what bothers us and what we can do to improve it and what other people can do to improve their relationship with us as well. But it's completely unfair to only focus on the things that they're doing wrong and to only talk with them about the things that they're doing wrong. It would be much better, much fairer to tell them, look, you did all of these things right today and I appreciate it. these are the things I appreciate, this is what I appreciate about it, and here's a couple of things that maybe bothered me or that you did that hurt my feelings or made me uncomfortable. That way, we're looking at things more accurately, like we have our glasses of reality on. So the next thought distortion is called jumping to conclusions and mind reading. So this is when we take a situation and we make assumptions about it. We jump to a conclusion without nearly enough information on it. So one example would be if you were planning to hang out with friends or with a friend and they canceled last minute, it would be easy to assume something like, I'm not as important as whatever came up, they don't care about me, they're not being thoughtful. But in fact, you have not nearly enough information to make that assumption. You never know what could have happened. Maybe they had an emergency come up, maybe they got called into work, maybe something else, maybe they were feeling sick. If we make the assumption that it's about us, we're assuming we know what they're thinking and feeling, we're definitely going to be missing a lot of information. What we could do instead is say, oh man, I'm disappointed that that friend wasn't able to come. I don't know what came up. I could either ask them so I have more information, or I could just try to accept it and move forward. Okay, so another thought distortion that people often run into is called fortune telling. So where I think I've heard this one quite a lot is when it comes to romance, where people who have had either bad luck with love or had a lot of painful situations assume they're never going to find love, they're just going to end up alone, they're never going to be happy in a relationship, there's no good guys or no good girls out there, everyone's bad. All of these things are crazy thought distortions. And when they assume that because their past dictates their future, that's fortune telling. We always need to leave space for growth, for understanding, and for people to be different, because we never really know what's going to happen even 10 minutes from now, and definitely have no idea what our lives are going to look like 10 years from now. Distortion is catastrophizing. So that's when I take something that's small and make assumptions about it, making it really big. The flip side of this one is minimizing. So that's when I take something really good and narrow it down to saying, oh, that doesn't actually mean anything. So for example, if I got in a fight with one of my brothers and maybe I said something I wasn't proud of, then I could make the assumption, I could catastrophize and say, I'm a terrible sister. And then even if I have 5 brothers, so even if they all told me, I'm an amazing sister, you're such a good sister, you always do this, that, and the other, we love you, I could say, no, none of that really matters because I made this mistake, I'm a terrible sister. So that would be both catastrophizing and minimizing. And sometimes we do this and it really hurts our self-esteem because it's just taking the worst possible kernel of truth, not even of truth, just a kernel of one experience, and saying, this is who I am. This is what dictates my worth in these relationships or whatever situation. Okay, so the next one is called emotional reasoning. That is when we accept our emotion as a fact. That's a really dangerous one, but I think this happens a lot. So one example of emotional reasoning that I think a lot of us face is about our appearance. So we say, I don't feel pretty, therefore I am ugly. Do you see how different that is? I don't feel pretty. That's a feeling. That's subjective. Therefore I am ugly. Now we're saying this is a fact, and this is concrete and unchangeable, which is a crazy huge jump. And so one thing that we can do in those scenarios when we're using our feelings and thinking of them as facts is we can think about all of the times that wasn't true, that feeling was not the case. So all of the times in this scenario when you felt pretty or you felt more attractive, you felt dolled up, or you got out of the shower and you felt just like yourself and you looked in the mirror and you're like, oh, I'm actually okay. When we just forget about all of those times and then say, okay, I'm ugly because I feel not pretty right now, that is when we're emotionally reasoning, and that is the thought distortion. The next thought distortion I see a lot is called the fallacy of fairness. So that's when people make the assumption that life is supposed to be and should be fair. Unfortunately, that is not true, and when we believe that, we build a lot of anger and resentment and feelings of hopelessness in the world. One place that's kind of silly that I see this a lot is sports games, When people get so angry at the refs because, oh, that wasn't a fair call, they didn't even see what happened, how could this be the call that the refs made, this is so unfair, and then their team loses and they're livid. If that ref would have been fair, if they would have seen things the way that they were, then this would not have happened, we would have won. That is an example of a fallacy of fairness. Of course, the refs are not going to always see what actually happened perfectly. That would be impossible. They're down there real time, seeing a bunch of things going on. And if we are living under the assumption that they'll be able to, we're going to constantly be angry at them. We're going to constantly resent them. And it's going to be a less enjoyable experience to watch a sports game than if we're just able to say, okay, they're not going to make perfect calls, and I'm here to enjoy the actual players doing what they've trained so hard to do and are incredible at. The next one is called control fallacies. So there's two of these. One is either that you have complete control over things, and the other is that you have no control over things. Both of those lead to really tricky situations. When you believe you have no control over things, you go through life feeling like a victim, feeling like all of these things are happening to you and there's nothing you can do to change it. When in fact we all know that isn't really true. Anytime we're in a situation, even though there are things that we can't control, there are things we can do to improve it. This kind of goes back to that growth mindset of, yeah, maybe I did get the promotion and maybe I feel like a victim because I should have. But in fact, what could I have done differently in order to get that promotion? What could I have changed in order to increase the chance that I would have? No, life isn't fair. It might not have happened, but there are things in my control that give me power to make changes. On the other hand, feeling like you can control everything ends up putting so much pressure and stress on people, and it's basically the same distortion, because in fact, life is not fair, and you cannot control everything, and even if you do everything right, you might still not get the outcome you want, because there's too many different players and situations going into every single moment of every day. It's crazy to think that we could control what's going to happen all the time. The last thought distortion we're going to talk about today is called personalization. So that's when we take something that's arbitrary and take it personally. So for example, if you're on your way to the train and you raise your hand for a taxi and the taxi passes you and you say, what, this day is just gonna be terrible, the world is out to get me, that taxi driver is a jerk, and you just take it really personally and you say like, this is about me, these things that have nothing to do with me are about me and my life and how terrible the world can be. We can all have those days when so many things go badly that it's just like, man, the world is out to get me. But the truth is, it's probably just a coincidence of things going badly, and tomorrow will be different. Okay, so now that we understand a lot of different thought distortions, there's different things we can do to combat them, but today I'm only going to talk about starting to notice them. This is the first step. I just want you to start to notice that when you have a thought and it bothers you, maybe it brings up a little emotion, you start to feel a little angry, you start to feel a little anxious, you start to feel a little triggered in some way. Think, did this thought have a distortion? And just think about the thought and see, does this seem totally accurate? Or does this seem like maybe I'm using a cognitive or a thought distortion and placing it over this, like I'm taking off my clear glasses so I'm seeing things a little more blurry? And just start to notice that throughout the day. Start to become aware of your thoughts and start to become aware of how many of them are distorted. Alright, if you liked this video, let me know and I can do another video on more thought distortions, as well as a video about how to change those thought distortions to accurate perceptions.